Team, how are we? Welcome back to another episode of the High Performance Coach Podcast. I hope all is good in your world. Today, I have the absolute pleasure, privilege, and honor to interview, connect, conversate with the most anabolic accountant I have ever met. Funny story, when me and James first met, we were at Mr. Tom Mack's business event, and James had dressed incredibly professionally for the day and literally looked like Mr. Incredible in this white shirt. And then I don't know why, but I looked down at his crotch, which I don't know whether that was just, we were just bonding at the time. and due to the density of his quads, he had a rip in his jeans, and it was love at first sight. And here we are. So James, how are you, buddy? Welcome to the High Performance Coach Podcast.
Yeah, the fact that you are in Portugal and can't look at my crotch anymore keeps me up at night. But thank very much for introducing me. As I say, the first time you and I bumped into each other, it was love at first sight, Joe. A lot of respect for you, a lot of respect for what you do in the industry, and I think we both emulate that sort of just wanting to genuinely help people and obviously grow a network.
I love that. Let's delve into James before we talk all things accountancy, numbers and finances and all of that stuff. What do you think are the key ingredients that's made James Gibson, James Gibson?
Honestly, I'll be totally open and honest on this. I have a lot of drive, a lot of determination, a lot of stubbornness, but a lot of fear as well in the background, a lot of fear of failure. Constantly not trying to prove myself to others, but prove myself to myself, because I would look out into the world and say, well, if they're doing that, there's no reason that if I don't put the time, dedication into it, that I can't do it myself. I've always set myself small targets to make sure that this is ticking off the universe's boxes, so to speak. I'm the type of creep that gets into his car, and accountancy comes into this. And if I can get my miles to the gallon at a certain point, I've completed a task for the day. So a lot of target setting would be a big driver in my personal life, my business life, and building on that for business was a big thing. Played high-level rugby, was absolutely shockingly terrible at football. And then whenever I studied for my chartered exams, I moved into chartered accountancy, and I moved away from rugby into bodybuilding because it gave me the opportunity to be flexible with my time and my training regime. I was the creep at the back of the lecture theatre at the Chartered Institute, stinking the place out with fish and broccoli, and both of us can relate to that. You always got the person looking over your shoulder. But yeah, determined, driven, knowing to set myself targets that I could obtain. I don't want to be the next Elon Musk. If somebody said to me, here's all the sacrifices you have to make to be Elon Musk, I would weigh up the options to see, is it worthwhile? I'm a very calculated person, which would be the best way to describe me. But yeah, you just have to enjoy it, the process.
Where do you think that came from? Why do you think you're wired that way?
Honestly, I have quite a lot of family that was involved in business. I looked up to one of my uncles that I really respected. My father was an audit partner in Grant Thornton, one of the top 4 practices in the world. People always said, why didn't you go work under your father? But it was just natural that I wanted to go on my own journey and create my own thing. I knew my uncles had done it. My father had done it. My grandfather was a business owner. And I think it's nearly like ingrained in you. Is it nature or nurture? So knowing the respect that people had for my father, and everywhere we went, we gone to America and people would bump into him and know who he was. And it was the creepiest thing, because my brother would always say, you can go nowhere without somebody saying hello to you. And that respect that you seen growing up, that's what I kind of wanted. And you have to work for it, and you have to, as I always say, people always say, what do you want your legacy to be? And it's just to be remembered as being a decent human being. I had a compliment the other day from a construction client, and he said that another business owner that knew my dad said, oh, you're working with Robert Gibson's son. If he's half as good as his dad was, you're in good hands. So hearing things like that, it makes you feel good.
What do you think you took from your dad as an onlooker and somebody that was able to almost see behind the scenes of somebody that was running and operating at that level? What were some of the key things that you remember or you took that you think of almost stood you in such good stead?
I'll be totally honest on this podcast. I remember going to my father's office and down into his office in the corner of the building. and going in and people just coming in and having a bit of banter and a bit of a laugh and carrying on. I thought that's what chartered accountancy was. So I didn't realize. And when I got thrown in the deep end of being a trainee and working and doing all that, like for the first several months of being a trainee chartered accountant, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this the rest of my life. But then I didn't realize dad was in here in terms of the ladder and I was down here, and you have to put the time and the effort in. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I seen my father go through a very difficult time in his career. And I remember, you know, being there during that difficult time. I was a teenager, mid-teens. And, you know, seeing him go through that, but being determined and driven, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And everybody in this industry knows that there's days you wake up and you just can't be bothered. But my father held that in for at least a year or two before he even mentioned it to me, and being able to see that, but then also being annoyed that he didn't speak to me about it beforehand. And why did he let it go on for a year or two before he sort of spoke to me about it? But it's one of those things. It's like as one comment that he used to say to me was, when the good days outweigh the bad days, you're on to a winner. So as long as you can wake up and say, look, yesterday was a good day, today's not going to be that great, or today wasn't that great, but tomorrow's a new fresh day. I know it sounds so blasé, but guys, you just love what you do. You know what I mean? Everybody in this industry has got into it because they have a passion for helping people, educating people. We're all the same. So that's what drives me on a daily basis.
Let's now look at the transition, because I think, mate, this has just come to my mind. You must be a world record holder for the only accountant that's deadlifted 400 kilos.
Let's be honest, I'd probably put that record to 100 kilo for accountants. But I've never looked at the stats. I don't even know how many people on the planet. I think one of the stats I seen was there's only like is it less than 20 people on the planet can deadlift over 400 kilo or over. I think that's a bit of a farce, because as you well know, there's so many people now doing it because the 500 kilo barrier has been broken. But yeah, fun fact, Ronnie Coleman was wanted to be an accountant before he started the police service in USA. So he applied to so many accountancy jobs, but accountancy is one of those ones, unless you go in at a trainee level, you'll always be told you don't have enough experience. So yeah, strongest accountant in the world. I haven't met every accountant in the world, so I couldn't possibly comment.
Mate, I think that's definitely got to be your new Instagram bio. The strongest accountant, the most anabolic and strongest accountant in the world, can deadlift over 400 kg. Mate, in all honesty, what impact did bodybuilding have on you, and how do you believe that kind of shaped you in your journey?
So, as you well know, Joe, like bodybuilding is probably, especially whenever we were doing it back in the day, and I'm making us sound so old. Back in the day, as then the person that helped me is back in the days 30 years ago. But when we were doing it, it wasn't as publicized on Instagram. There was probably no Instagram, or it was just coming out, Facebook and all this. So it was putting hard work in when nobody was aware, not being able to post it in social media. As soon as it came out, I was guilty of it. Every single day it was progress, and it nearly became for everybody else instead of myself. But what did bodybuilding teach me for business purposes in life? There's shit days and there's good days. Every bodybuilder I interact with, I know whenever they're on a bodybuilding high during their diet, and I know whenever they're going to be on a low, because you've had it yourself. You're on 30. If you're going to have an off-plan meal on a Saturday, normally Thursday, Friday, you might be miserable in terms of energy levels and everything, but the excitement for eating off plan kicks in on a Friday evening, and you're like, this is great, I can eat again. And then Monday might be a slow day because you're nearly off like a carbohydrate hangover from eating so much over the weekends. Now, I done terribly, by the way. You can just ask Tom Hames. He probably detested having to help me through my last prep. Prior to that, I had very destructive eating habits and all that good stuff. But hard work, determination, work when nobody's looking, don't do it for the gram type thing, and your business will thrive off the back. If you're doing it for you and your life, the same as bodybuilding, if you're doing it for you and what you want and what you've set as a target and nobody else, you will stand the test of time, you will stand the pressure, and you will succeed to the level that you can.
think, but if I look back now, obviously, I think bodybuilding gets quite a bit of a rap, a bad rap in some regards from what I've seen. And of course, there's always going to be scenes and cycles and different perspectives and opinions. But if I now look back and I think about like my bodybuilding journey, whilst there was challenges and potentially some disruptive behaviors and potentially some relationships with myself and food that may not have been positive and may have been teetering on the edge, what it taught me around discipline, what it taught me around delayed gratification, what it taught me around patience, what it taught me around challenge, and what it taught me around just my inner narrative. And I think just being consistently good, not occasionally great, and actually the results are always in the weight. Like what that gave me was just a level of just a confidence and conviction in myself, because you're able to keep promises to yourself. And because it was hard and it was challenging and it was a choice, but you're able to, I think, prove so much to yourself, which stands you in such good stead because you apply those behaviors into other aspects of life.
Discipline.
Yeah.
Like waking up on a Saturday morning going, I dieted perfectly from Sunday to Friday evening. Now I'm going to mess it all up on Saturday here. No, waking up, that was the feeling that I really enjoyed when I was deep into a prep. I was focused. It was the target that I wanted to do. Now, a small target was, I remember when I was 16, I wanted to be Mr. Northern Ireland. And that was something in my head, like seeing the pictures in the wall in the gym I trained in. It's not Mr. Britain, it's not Mr. World, it's not the IFBB Olympia. But in my head, I looked at those pictures and I was like, I want to be Mr. Northern Ireland. And I still remember, as soon as I done that, I'm the type of person, I'm an extremist. I done that and then didn't lose love for the sport, but I accomplished the biggest goal that I'd ever set myself. And I was just like, right, that's part of my life that is now ticked off and done. Yes, I still train. Yes, I'm still interested in my food intake, but setting realistic goals and discipline is the biggest thing that probably you and I could have took away that we've migrated into business. One bad meal, if you slip up on a Wednesday evening because you're absolutely exhausted, it's no different than the business life cycle. If you're going to be in business for a decade, do you think 2 or 3 months of low sales or low productivity because you're unwell or something is really going to do anything in the grand scheme of things? As long as you, and now I'm starting to get into the accountancy, as long as you plan, budget, stick to the plan, and don't go react to the situation, your business will thrive, your business will continue to succeed. If you're in a bodybuilding prep and you go off plan with a terrible meal, what do? You wake up the next day, you reset the button, you go, right, here's a brand new day. Let's keep to the targets. Let's not push myself into a massive calorie deficit because I overconsumed yesterday, because then you go into panic mode and then you'll cause a vicious cycle. It's the same with business. You're doing it poorly for a couple of months, accept it, focus on it, adjust to it, and see what you need to improve on, rather than going, as long as you've got your tax money, your buffers in place, and your blankets and everything in place, you shouldn't have to panic. And therefore, running a business is not easy, guys. It's one of those things. It needs to be meticulously looked at. It needs to be, a close friend of mine that we both know, Richard, always says to me, if it's not recorded, it can't be managed.
What do you think are the commonalities? Because I think there are so many between obviously like the fitness professional world and the accountancy, but there's almost like this application for calories and trainings and reps and sets and volume and body weight and all these things. But then when it gets applied to accountancy and numericals and financials, that same kind of behavior almost goes out the window. Why do you, or there's almost a challenge and there's friction there. Why do you believe that is?
So the way I could describe it is, in a bodybuilding diet, you maybe incorporate an odd bit of nice food, especially in the off season. You maybe have a burger on a Tuesday and a pizza on a Thursday, and your off season, you have it all planned, you have it all detailed out, and it becomes very natural to people. But if I'm sitting with somebody and I'm saying, right, this is the budget that we're going to set you, this is the budget that we've looked at your personal budget, we've added in, entertainment, we've added in this, and then 3 months later they come back and I'm like, why is your bank balance is not what we set budget wise? Oh, I went and bought a Rolex watch. All right. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing these things, but if you don't plan for it, you can destabilize the cash flow of a business by doing ludicrously silly things. No different than going to the bakery and eating an entire cake. You don't do it because it's going to ruin your calories. It's going to ruin your budget for macros and calories. The same way you might go buy a nice watch, not a 15,000, 30,000 pound Rolex, to ruin your cash flow. The entire cake will ruin your calories, ruin your progress. A slice of cake won't. So there is so many commonalities. And like the more I talk about these things, I think people are probably thinking, what a gobshite, excuse my language. But there is so many similarities. And I was very blessed. One of my coaches, one of the guys that helped me in the gym, always taught me, he's a director of a family-owned company. And he always said, you know, be meticulous, write things down, record it, review it, adjust it. Business and bodybuilding is exactly the same.
I think coaches get into the industry, or fitness professionals get into the industry because they love coaching, and that's obviously their, you know, their kind of their bread and butter. And then they have to learn how to run a business, and then the financials come into it. And I think even if I look at me, like I was incredibly fortunate that my stepdad is a financial an IFA. I can literally remember what his title was then. And so obviously he, from obviously an early age, obviously was able to kind of give me some education. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have a clue. I wouldn't have had a clue what to do, how to do it. I wouldn't have had really any level of understanding or awareness, because it's not something that really gets taught. And I believe that there's this big gap where around obviously the financial education and the accountancy piece. And it's almost like a bit of a subject that doesn't necessarily get discussed or communicated.
I think we all know it. And like, I don't even care how good your upbringing was, how poor your upbringing was. I can empathize with both. But money inherently puts fear into people, because it's one of the things, like it's actually quite a new thing in terms of evolution and everything. Like it was always, and you look at nature and who's got the best looking nest in terms of birds, who's got the strongest body, like who's the biggest gorilla, who's the biggest, strongest lion. And as humans, we have now put all that natural energy into money. And the fear around money then is, I need more of it, I need more of it, I need more of it. And the richest people on the planet are people that know what enough is, in my opinion. When we're kids and we're going to the shop and mom or dad says, no, 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 instead of saying, no, you got one of those yesterday or you got one of those last week, normally the thing would be, no, we can't afford that. And I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast has heard at some stage in their life growing up, no, we can't afford that. And probably not understanding, like I've probably done it to my own son, he turns 5. And even though I have all this education and everything, I've probably done it myself. I've probably turned around, and you probably don't understand the amount of pressure that you're putting on money at such a young age. And doing your chores, here's £1, here's your pocket money, here's this. And we over glorify what money actually is from such a young age. Is it any wonder that people our age are so fixated on it? But in my honest opinion, the industry was always set up and advertised as work less, earn more, and like over glorified even that. But you and I both know, buddy, we're 14-hour days plus most days of the week, you know, and it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes a hell of a lot of effort to grow a successful business. And people always say, what you regard as a successful business? I regard a successful business that can pinpoint, is it covering its business expenses? Is it covering its personal extraction? Is there enough money set aside for future retirement investment? As soon as the investments are all ticked off, that's what I regard as a successful business. Not one that lasts 5 years, 10 years, but one that can actually stand back in your journey and go, I have my investment targets met. You know, yes, you have your goals like buying a Porsche, a Mustang, or whatever you want to buy, but I have those goals after I've met solid structural foundations of investment goals first. I will look back in 20 years, 30 years and go, I'm thankful for the mindset I have now. Whereas if I was buying the luxury items now, guarantee in 20, 30 years, I'll be going, but if I could have took that money and put it into an investment, which would have made life a lot easier in the future when life becomes a lot harder, because we're not going to have the same health. We're not going to have, you know, it's all about building security. And I do know that one of the common phrases is operating out of a scarcity mindset. I don't believe scarcity mindset can be improved with sales. I think scarcity mindset can be improved with knowing that you have a business buffer, a personal buffer, an investment portfolio, and that you're looking at these things regularly, because there's been a lot of big businesses that have come to me, but they still have scarcity mindset. Business down here looks at business up here going, if I can get to that, I'm going to operate out of that scarcity mindset. I'll not have it anymore. By the time they get there, it was a great podcast. I know I'm rambling here, but there was a great podcast I seen recently there. And who was it with? oh, I'm going to kick myself later. But it was like, every time you meet your goals become historic. And have you appreciated? You were actually one of the people that stood to me and said, have you celebrated those goals that you've hit? And I remember looking back after hitting 2 or 3 of them and going, no. I just woke up the next day and was like, let's move the goalposts. Let's move goalposts. Whereas what we try to build off the back of having a hand on people's finances is, what do you need down here? Here's the extraction. Here's the investment. Sales are up here, and there's a big journey between those, and we need to map it all up, to make sure that businesses are operating efficiently, effectively, and you're not just growing this monster for no reason.
I think the thing that I love and I almost refer to is gone back to like the coaching side. It's like the body weight. People fear and potentially now have an association or relationship with their body weight every single time they stand on the scales, if they now don't have a level of education and awareness around basically why and what is now going to lead to those fluctuations. Exactly the same applies when it comes to obviously the financials and looking at the number on a screen. Like me and one of my best mates like joke, it's like, it's literally just made up numbers on a screen. But that can then often, your worldview, your association, and your beliefs towards what money represents and what it now means, when you place that onto that number on a screen, that then will determine how you think, the behaviors that you then obviously operate from, and will quite often determine your mood and all of the kind of following actions that you're going to then kind of proceed with. When it comes back down to that thing, it's like, as a coach, you're like, yeah, my client's body weight is going to go up and down. My client's body weight is now going to shift due to these fluctuations. All right, my financials are now going to shift due to A, B, C, and D. And then when you've got that awareness, you've got that tracking, you've got the data, you've got the reporting, you've got the infrastructure and the understanding, you can then start to apply some like logic and rationale to it, which then allows you to remove your emotion and start to see, which for me is obviously the beauty and the power of now being able to have a specialist, an expert, and obviously the reporting structure in place, which is so key. So you can now forecast and make the necessary and the appropriate decisions in alignment with what you want. Because when you don't have that, you just think that you're always chasing more, and then you're in the gap instead of being in the game. And I think this is something that is so integral, but there's almost maybe a fear associated with it because you almost don't want to face the facts sometimes. And I think being able to step into that is huge.
As you said, and I think it's a great way to describe it to coaches, imagine taking on a new client. If you don't have the history of how their body reacted due to eating gluten or eating this or eating that, or maybe they're susceptible to getting a niffy stomach if they eat too much chicken, or they allergic to peanuts, you don't get peanuts in their diet. It's no different than when you come on with an accountant. And if you're only seeing your accountant once a year, it's nearly like a setup process every time you're having a conversation with them, because they haven't seen the data, they haven't seen the fluctuations, they haven't had conversations with you on a regular basis to know, well, you were feeling a bit down in November, or you were away on holiday in November. And then the figures become very obscure to the person that you're trying to get advice from. Whereas if there's a reporting structure in place and clear communication, and you've outsourced your finance to somebody else, and all you have to do is have the eagle-eyed view of it, then you can build a better relationship, a better structured business by knowing, well, this action has this reaction, rather than seeing your accountant once a year and going, yeah, I done an action back in June 2022 and I'm only looking at it now. It's things like that. It's about especially in the modern era, you couldn't have done this sort of thing 20 years ago whenever real-time accounting wasn't a thing. My father I know one of the projects that he was working on, they actually had to get the PDF bank statements, as in they were sent in the post to not their office, but the client's office. The client then one of the accountants had to go collect them, bring them in, because they were trying to monitor the business at a fine degree. Whereas now it's instantaneous. It's a mirror image of a bank. And therefore the advice off the back of it should be far, far greater. A lot of accountants advertise real-time accounting, but if you're not speaking to your accountant on a regular basis and they don't have the historical data of what's happened in your business and what you've implemented and what you're doing, and then being able to throw it forward, it's the same as dieting. Like if any competitive coaches are listening to this, it's like a client coming to you 3 weeks out from a show, but they were with a different coach for 12 weeks prior. The 12-week prior coach is probably the best coach to keep them going to the end in most circumstances, unless they're a terrible coach. But you trying to learn their body 3 weeks before a show would be, professionally, you probably stand back and go, I'll do my best if you really want to come to me, but it's going to be difficult. It's no different than coming to an accountant, especially an accountant that gives a shit. I look at a set of accounts, and normally people come to me when there's a problem and I have to guide them out of it. But there's a really crappy stage at the start where people probably hate the sight of my face.
What do you think are some of the key numbers that a coach needs to be tracking if they wanted to now be to get a hold and get a grip over their accountancy and for them to be able to understand the health of their business? What would you say from having watched, looked, and worked alongside hundreds, if not now probably thousands of coaches?
I would say profit is probably king. Profit after tax being even superior. But the problem with this is a lot of, it's no different than if I was a person coming to you for a consult for diet and training and health. If I came to you and then I said off the back of it, okay, I think I could do that myself, but no, I don't have the expertise that you have in health, nutrition, training programs, whether I'm probably better doing steady state cardio or, high intensity cardio. It's like somebody coming to me and I'm saying profit after tax is the best thing to look at. Well, I can measure my profit okay. And most of the time when we get people come on with us, because we are chartered professional accountants and we're looking at this, clients come on the odd time that are applying the full mortgage payment against their rental properties, and that's not tax deductible. So it's about knowing what tax deductible expenses are in play. So profit after tax is king because you've taken into consideration sales up here minus the VAT. You've took into consideration your expenses, allowable tax deductible expenses. You've got your profit. You've then got your tax hit on that profit. And then you have your profit after tax, which is the money that you have access to from a corporate structure, even from a sole trade structure, same thing, tax after profit or profit after tax. You've got your sole trade income, expenses, VAT registration potentially in play, and being able to see, right, well, what should I be in theory setting away? And a lot of these systems now in banks are like set aside 10% or 20% of the money that comes into the bank. But guys, I'm not saying it's gimmicky, it's helped a lot of people, but why not just know? That's, it's so easy now. I'm not going to say it's so easy. It's easy because we know how to do it. But what we have progressed from 3 years ago to be able to build what we build today and give the information, I couldn't do what I do now 3 years ago. So it's time, it's effort, it's the education, it's experience. Profit after tax is actually quite a difficult thing to work out sometimes. Sometimes it's very simple. And then one of the other most important things you need to look at is your extraction. Because only by knowing what you need out of a business can you hope to build a business to facilitate that. So if I know that a client needs X amount per month, I can then retrofit it back up into a business to say, right, the mentor said 10K in sales. The mentor then, when you hit 10K sales, 15, then 15, then 20, then 20, then 25. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but we help businesses get an actual two hands on the wheel and know where they want to go and know why they need and how they get there, because they know what they want from their business. And having those sorts of conversations to be able to say, well, what do you want from this? Do you want retirement targets? Is it a brand new house? So you're a first time buyer? Do you want an additional property? Do you want property rental income? Do you want passive income through ISA investments? And being able to take all the tax considerations, it's like a big bowl of soup, but there's so much involved in it. And being able to pick the pieces out of it that then you can put the puzzle together and the roadmap, as I keep referring to it, together. So profit after tax and your personal extractions, which then feed up into your sales.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I see and have also experienced as well myself is that, like a £5 a month business, a 10 grand a month business, a 20 grand a month business, a £2.50 in a packet of crisp month business, is not then the cash that goes into your back pocket. And that's where the discipline of now understanding financials, understanding obviously your expenses, tax, and all the other considerations, and obviously the forecasting as well, that really starts to come into play, because we've got to now not look at obviously just top line sales, but then also reoccurring revenue. Where is that at this present moment in time? What's the lifetime value of a client on average? And ultimately how you then starting to build the runway, especially if you're looking to build, expand, grow. You're now looking to obviously get to the quote unquote next level, which will require you to then reinvest back in, which means your profitability will come down, and being able to understand and then know, okay, this is where I sit. It allows you to build a better picture over, okay, these are the decisions that I now need to make. So you're now making decisions based upon logic and data, not just emotion. Because when emotion comes into it, that's when almost we can make decisions out of fear, scarcity, or even potentially just a spur of the moment thing that may not potentially be aligned. And I think just now being able to have clarity over that is so key, because that data is building your next phase and allowing you to understand what it is that you need to do based upon where it is that you need to go, and also having clarity around how far do I now need to take this business to be able to get to where I want to from a financial perspective, which is a completely different conversation to what I want to do from maybe like an impact or self-actualization side of things. And I think being able to just now have certainty around that is absolutely key. So if somebody's now looking at trying to kind of take a hold over their accountancy, and they're trying to understand, okay, this is where my business is just now, what would be some of the key considerations that you would now be looking for, that you would need them to have in place in order for them to be able to paint a clearer picture?
Segregation. Doesn't matter if it's a corporate structure, a partnership, or a sole trade business. Here's a big gate down the middle, a big fence down the middle of the page. Here's your business over here. Here's your personal life over here. Segregate the two. Do not use the company's money or the business's money for buying personal stuff. It's treat yourself like an employee. You wouldn't work for PwC or Grant Thornton or Sainsbury's or Barclays Bank and use their company cards to pay for your personal stuff. You pay yourself. You get paid a salary. Treat your business completely separately. When you step in here, put the company director or the business owner's hat on. When you step out here, you are the employee. And I think a lot of people, if they can take one thing away from this, is that, and therefore have separate bank accounts, because you can much better look at the business. I'm a great believer in, if you're going to look at your accountant once a year because you're at a level that you don't believe you need this sort of guidance and help, if you think it's a business expense, if you're standing over something and you can go, I believe this is a business expense because I've only bought it for the sole purpose of running my business, then put it through your business bank account. If you're slightly unsure, put it through your business bank account, because it's better handing your business bank account over to your accountant at the end of the year, as opposed to going, here's my business bank account, but there's a load of transactions that I didn't know if they were business or not, and I put them through my personal, because then they have to sift through all that. The cleaner the data in the business, the easier it is to look for tax efficiencies, the easier it is to look at cash flow forecasts, the easier it is to see peaks and troughs in the business and areas of concern in the business. So try to keep those completely separately. And when we say this, and that's one of the big educating things that we bring clients on and do in the first couple of months, is we monitor the bank accounts. We make sure that, look, when we're looking at back in the day, 4 years ago, when I was looking at clients' accounts and the director's loan or the drawings account was that long, one of the big things that we started focusing in on is we want to see like that for April 24, that for March. Whereas when we brought clients on at the start, they were maybe sitting that long for every month. Far more data to digest. It's the same as coaching. If you knew that a client was eating every hour on the dot and they were just snacking on apples and crisps and protein bars and everything, it'd be very hard for you to focus in and see what's the pain points within this person's journey in terms of fitness. Whereas if they're eating a healthy breakfast, a healthy lunch, a healthy dinner, and a snack before bed, there's 4 meals you need to look at. Far much less data for you to process and be able to provide a decent service off the back. Whereas if you've got one bank account for your business and your personal life, look at the account. The accountant's probably going to get pissed off when they look at it, because they're just like, this is just mind-numbing. There's 10 bloody pages per month for transactions. Whereas clean bank account, Stripe payouts, go cardless payouts, payments to certain softwares, payments to great business mentors like Mr. Joe Harris, and being able to see things like that, they can digest it quicker and they can provide a better service to you. So that is one of the most important things, is segregate your bank of your business and your personal life.
This is going to be a bit of an open-ended question, but we'll explore and see where it goes, because I know the answer is going to be, it depends. How does somebody know how much to pay themselves?
So it's actually very simple. If you have your business bank account completely separated from your personal, you can pull a PDF out. You can quickly, and it doesn't have to be to the finite degree that we provide, but if you can see all your Stripe payments coming in, or your Go cardless, or your bank transfers, and you can quickly on an Excel spreadsheet go, that's income, that's income, that's income, put it to the top of the page and say total sales for the month is this. Then you've got all your perceived bank expenses or your business expenses. And as long as you're not putting £1,000, £2,000 of what things are called as in grey area, and then you find out actually that wasn't a business expense and now my tax is actually higher, keep it as clean as possible. Total sales, total expenses, and then 12,000 as a sole trader, you have 12,570 tax free. As a company, you're taxed on every pound of profit. So you just apply the percentage, and that leaves you at that. Now, how much time are you going to dedicate to that? How much fear are you going to put into potentially getting it wrong? And that's why you outsource it to an accountant that will do it for you. It's no different than me when I went to my last bodybuilding prep. I was running my company, so I was like, I need to outsource the coaching. I had never had a coach before that. And then at that point, I was like, I need to outsource somebody else. I need to be held accountable to somebody else because my brain span is so dedicated on this business right now. I still want to do a bodybuilding show, but I outsourced the thing that I could outsource. So if you want to try do it yourself, separate and pull your bank account out each month, total sales, total perceived bank expenses, and then apply the percentages of tax, which can vary between 8% national insurance, 20% personal taxes in a sole trade structure up to 50,270, and then the taxes. And this is where I don't want to bombard people with percentages, but a quick Google search will sort it out.
What do you now typically see that separates the fitness businesses that are able to sustain and grow in comparison to the ones that now potentially stagnate? And if you look at it, because this is quite cool, because you can look at it, you look at it more from a data perspective. What are potentially some of the typical patterns that you now see between the ones that ascend and the ones that stagnate?
Honestly, authenticity. You know, if you're in the game, if you're in the game to help people, you mightn't grow as quickly as the boy that has literally bombarded social media. I've seen a great story there earlier, a post on Instagram where it was a gentleman sitting at his table, and he's a client of ours, and he was like arguing with himself, and he was saying like, oh, just spew lies out and, you know, tell people that they need to do X, Y, and Z, even if you don't truly believe it. But I don't believe that, but it sells. And like telling somebody that, you know, eat your 5 a day, eat your chicken, eat your protein. It's not exciting. It's not, you know, it doesn't get likes. It doesn't get pushed to other people to say, here, look what this person just said. You know, there's a recent study or a recent video that got released there, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he said something. He was commenting about Crohn's disease and everything, and saying it was all down to your diet and to don't go to your doctor, don't get the surgery for a legitimate disease. And it has gone viral, you know, so there's things like that. Authentic, honest businesses will survive the test of time, in my opinion, because they just will. It's like growing your business nice and steady. It's like trying to throw a house up in 30 days that takes 6 months to construct. You're going to cut corners. You're going to have holes in your business. Do it authentically, do it quickly. Or one, if you take too many clients on, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to have holes in your finances. You're not going to, you know, make mistakes. As I said to another gentleman I was talking to the other day, if a coach goes from here to here in terms of sales, whereas a coach can say no would be a big thing and go, here's a bit of growth. Oh, I made a mistake. I'm going to drop down a wee bit. Here's a bit more growth. Oh, I made another mistake there. A couple of clients dropped off. One, you don't have that emotional roller coaster to go, oh, I made a big mistake here, and now everybody, you know, and I've lost the clients because I was trying to get new clients on board, and the clients that I should have been paying attention to have now dropped off, and the sales went like that, which then causes the depression and the stress and the anxiety, and then makes you chase that again, and then you get into that cycle. Whereas a good, solid business that knows when to say no and switch off the sales consult list and go, growth, right? Let's restructure. Let's go for more growth. You might end up here, but this business has done this and could end up completely burnt out. So a stable business is the one that stands the test of time, in my opinion.
I wholeheartedly agree in terms of like steady scale, speed often fails. And don't get me wrong, like sometimes you have to speed up to slow down.
Yes.
But there's a huge component of now being able to make sure that as you continue to grow, it's that there's that balance between the front facing and the back end. The front facing in terms of the marketing, the sales, and the lead gen, but then the back end in terms of the systems, the operations, and the delivery. And I'm a massive believer in ultimately the quality of your business is now going to be determined by the quality of your relationships and the quality of your results. And that then will basically dictate the retention and also the referrals that you're going to get. So if you can now build a great foundation of like reoccurring revenue where you're not just reliant upon new sales every single month, so you're not basically chasing that next sale because you've got a great delivery mechanism, you've got an incredible customer journey, you've built a great community, a great culture, and you've now been able to help people above and beyond just this like transactional 90-day, let me help you get you a result, and you're able to now go a level deeper, and you're able to take people obviously through a process. The impact that can have in terms of sustainability is not necessarily sexy, but if you can be patient enough and you can now do the groundwork and build the infrastructure, I think that's where there's such a huge ROI, but it's just not as dopamine hitting, and it's not as kind of potentially instantly rewarding as basically just going out and chasing down new clients and just trying to scale. Because I've seen so many people that have basically had 1 or 2 big months, and then all of a sudden it's just come crashing down, and the expectation of where they think they should be in comparison to where they are, and they're in the gap. And it does take a level of discipline and a level of patience and a level of frustration to now be able to get it to a point to play a slightly longer term game. But I think that applies in every sense of life, in all honesty. And
I think another thing that I've recently had a conversation with people about, they thought they were doing terrible. They thought they were like, I don't feel any better than I was doing 2 years ago. And I was like, that's because you're fixating on sales. And the problem is you're not even looking at your sales back in March 2022. You're looking at your sales that happened in February when you've done a product launch. And that product launch, there's so much involved in that. But the number, if you keep focusing on sales, will fluctuate. What's the average? What was this time last year like? What has the past 3 months average been? Are you still above average for the entire year? Looking at averages is a very important thing. But they thought they were doing terrible. And when I broke it down for them and I said, yeah, you're both taking £4,000 a month each out of this company structure. And then I pulled up some nice facts from statistics in the UK. And I'm like, you're a top 5% earner in the UK. What is the fundamental problem here is not the fact that your business is not doing well, but you don't believe it. It's in your brain. It's you're fixated on looking at social media and seeing these 20K months, 50K months, 60K months, but nobody's advertising their profit. I don't think I've ever seen anybody actually go, this was my profit for the month, because that's nearly too intrusive. But everybody's happy to shout about sales. You know, if you could see the profit margins of businesses, you might be a little less anxious about it, or it might make you actually see a truer figure to go, right, well, if they're doing profit of 10K a month, you know, that's obtainable, but they're doing 60K a month or 50K or 30K a month in sales, 10K a month in profit. When you start looking at, right, well, what am I willing to invest time-wise, subcontractors, VAs, and everything else included, and build a business based off targets of profit and not sales. Because I could have a business doing 30K in sales and doing 12K in profit. I could have a business doing 20K in sales and doing 13K in profit. Which is the better business?
I think this is where you see the screenshots and you see the kind of the highlight reel and you see the glimpses, but there's no context behind it. And it then also comes back down to, how does this apply to you, and what is it that you want? What is it you're willing to compromise and sacrifice to get there? And I think that determines the decisions that you make. So again, like I remember we had a conversation last year. I was like, right, okay, James, this is where we are. And I want to be able to go here in terms of the impact we want to have. This is the team that I want to build. This is the infrastructure. The reason being is because we want to improve our, like, we want to be obsessed with customer delivery and how we can now provide and create the greatest coaching container on the fucking planet. And I knew that that was going to lead to a huge reduction in my profitability for a good number of months. And there's a part of you, obviously, when you're in that process, that feels like it's a risk. There's a little bit of uncertainty. And then you're like, do I really want to do this? But then it's about understanding, well, what's my vision? Where do I want to go? What am I looking to build? What am I now looking to create? And ultimately, now, what are the steps and what's the resistance that I have to go through in order for me to be able to get to that point? But being able to then just recognize, right, okay, your profitability has now come down, but actually, do you know what? Your business stability and infrastructure is better. Do you know what? You've actually now clawed back a little bit more free time. Do you know what? You've now created the next step from which you can now obviously build and scale from. There's a whole host of obviously differing factors that now come into play, but you get to a certain level. And then I do think you have to be able to ask yourself, right, okay, well, what am I willing to risk? What am I willing to compromise? And where do I want to go?
But you done it calculated, Joe, you know, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the fundamental thing that sticks in my mind when you asked me, and we had those meetings last year, was you were concerned about staff members. You were concerned about the client base. You were concerned about providing maximum value. This was the whole point of this process, was to maximize the value that you could give your clients. And it wasn't just profit and sales. Profit came into it from a security standpoint as an individual, which is completely natural, but it wasn't at the forefront of your mind. It was about maximum growth to be able to help more people. And that's why I then really, really enjoy helping people like yourself and being able to go, well, here's all our data. If we need to throw this amount of costs into this, and we expect the sales to maintain, grow, or fall, this is the 3 scenarios we can throw out. And we expect to be back on target for profitability by month 6, month 5, month 4. And then we monitor that again, but only by looking and having the historical data and throwing it forward for the extra costs involved in it, and being able to see a reduction in sales, an increase in sales, or stable sales moving forward, can you only hope to then have targets?
I think this starts at the very beginning. It doesn't matter whether, you know, you're just starting out or whether you're now 3, 5, 10 years in the game. It comes back down to exactly as you would say with, again, the education that you would now want to be able to give somebody with their health and fitness. It's like, if you can build that infrastructure and you can now build that base and you can build that education, you can build that awareness, it then allows you to make better quality decisions. And I think the biggest thing for me that stands out really is that you just want to feel in control. You want to feel in control. And I know that obviously financials play such an integral role in livelihood, or decisions that we make, how we perceive it. Like, there's a whole host of other factors that come into play. But now being able to feel in control and being able to have that awareness and being able to have that runway and being able to have the forecast and being able to have the predictions, and for you to be able to not feel as though that owns you, because if you're building a business solely on just trying to make money, then you're always going to feel skint. You're always going to feel that you haven't got enough. So it's just one piece of the puzzle. But it's then looking at how does that piece of the puzzle now tie into absolutely everything else you're now doing. And instead of then like hiding it away, exactly as you said, I still remember a client that we had is actually, when they were able to front up and actually look at their finances, they're actually able to say, do you know what, I'm doing way better than I thought I was. But I was so scared at looking at my numbers because I thought I was doing worse. Why? Because of the stories that they'd now just fundamentally have made up in their mind around what it is that they believe to be true, or where they perceived they were in the marketplace, you know, which is completely relevant and specific to you, your needs, and what it is that you're now looking for, which I think is huge. In terms of you running a business, being a family man, and also then still trying to be the most anabolic accountant, how have you found the growth and the ascension of James? And actually, let's talk about it from a business perspective. There's been a huge element of you really going narrow and deep from a niche side of things, from going from accountant to then actually FitPro Financial. How was that journey? Because that's something that a lot of fitness professionals be going through. But there's a lot of fear around niching down and going more narrow and deep because of, I'm going to be speaking to less people, blah, 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 blah. So how's that journey been for James?
So in terms of like life as business, bodybuilding, well, not bodybuilding anymore, but training and family life and everything, I'm well willing to accept the fact that other aspects of my life had to take a step back. And that included family, that included fitness, that included me now having a nice little pouch of a stomach comparatively to a 6-pack that I grew up with and had since till I was 20, 29 years old. You know, that had to take a step back. But it's about knowing, and especially having such an understanding wife and a life partner that, you know, knew that this is what I wanted to do, not even just for myself, but for my family and for the people around me. And having an understanding individual that supports you through no matter what was such a big driver behind this. I would not be where I am without my loving wife. But she would openly admit that she's now in a situation where I was working from 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was going to work when my son was still asleep, and I was coming home when my son was asleep, you know, during the working week. So things have to take a hit. I'm not saying it's eternal. It doesn't have to be eternal, but if you have your goals in place, you can then sit with your significant other and go, right, well, if I meet this target, now I had a habit of going, if I meet this target, and then the target moved, and then the target moved, and then the target moved. But being in a situation now where I can go, I'm content, I'm helping the people I want to help. I would want to help a lot more, but then the sacrifice would have to be continued reduced time with my family, continued reduced time on my own physique, my health. I'm a type 1 diabetic as well, so that's an additional stress in on top of it. And having that monitored on a 6-month basis, I can quickly see if my health's starting to deteriorate or starting to look better and things like that. In terms of then, as you said, so in terms of balancing all three, it's a continuous balancing act. You know, It's about making sure that my family is content, they have a roof over their head, the food on their table, but it's also making sure that I spend quality time with them and be present in the moment. And that's something you and I talk about quite a lot. And then looking at the business and being in the business enough, but how much do you give? How much do you sort of put boundaries in place and everything like that? You know me, I don't have any bloody boundaries, and something I probably should be working on. I'll answer a message at 3 a.m. I'll answer a message at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. If I was at a family funeral, you probably guarantee I'd be sitting there replying to bloody clients' messages. I don't have that switch off mechanism. It's not good for me. It's probably not good for the clients from an expectation standpoint, but it's just the way I am, and I don't feel like battering my head against the wall to change myself, because that's my natural way of doing things. And then when you say about niching down, so obviously being professionally chartered, the local businesses in the local town that I live in all know that I'm a professional chartered accountant. So we do, like, I still work with construction engineers, doctors, professionals, consultants, shops. We still do a lot of work outside the fitness industry. When we converted to FitPro Financial, the actual structured company, there is the odd time that someone would message me going, "Oh, I take it you don't work with my line of work, but I was maybe hoping that you could help." But the fundamentals of a construction client, you have to remember the fitness online community is very, very young in the grand scheme of businesses, but it's no different in terms of money, finance, and management. You can guarantee that there's a lot of construction boys, painters, plumbers, electricians, handymen, anything, that have the same fundamental problems from a finance standpoint, a tax standpoint, as your business. They're completely different services, but cash flow can be a problem. Setting aside enough, as I was going to say at a stage earlier in this conversation, if you're 2 years into your business and you haven't had what Ryan mentioned at the event that we hosted at your radio, a save point. So if you're still in the same place from a investment standpoint 2 years into the future that you are now, what true targets have you actually ticked off from a personal standpoint of 10 years into the future? You have to have a save point. You trade. Here's a target. This is what I commit to. I'm going to buy a property. I'm going to invest in an ISA. I'm going to invest some money into passive stream of income. I'm going to invest it into my pension. Construction, fitness industry, every business on the planet, you will find we have conversations with people that are exiting their businesses. So I'm very fortunate that I work with fresh startup businesses, and businesses are coming towards their end, either handing their business over to their family or handing their business over to a manager buyout, things like that come into play. And the fundamentals are the same. If they hadn't planned and they hadn't worked it out, they're relying on the income that they're going to sell their business at, because there's a tangible value of the building or the shop or the construction, like client list. One of the problems with the online coaching community is if there's a short lifespan on your customers, it means that there might be no time. I say this quite lightly, there might be no tangible value to sell it on at the end of your business life cycle. Therefore, you need to be more committed at investing throughout your business journey, because guess what? Your profit margins are far superior to construction, because they have to buy goods and sell goods. It's all up here. So your profit margins will be better, much, much better than the typical business in the UK. But with that, you need to take into consideration that margin needs to be reduced by future investment for your stability and your security into your future.
There you go. A lesson from Mr. James Gibson in accountancy and financial planning, tied in nicely. Dude, final question, because I know that you're getting on a plane and going on a holiday tomorrow, so you need to go home and obviously wax your chest, put your Disney shorts on.
It's the back needs done.
What have you changed your mind on recently?
I think Shane would agree on this. When Shane joined me a number of years ago, I operated out of a pure, frantic, scared mode. Everything was going to go wrong. The business wasn't going to be here in 3 months. That's completely natural. I'm sure you've felt it as well, Joe. I think being more open about having the insecurities, talking about them more, instead of just seeing the constant. I'm not saying everybody needs to get onto social media and start going, "I've had a really rough day." But what I'm saying here is there's going to be times in your business that it feels like the world is on your shoulders because you have so much responsibility for your clients, for your subcontractors, for your employees, for your loved ones, for the people watching you. You know, your close friends going, oh, like, how's it going? Are you going to get a real job? You know, there's many of people have said to me, when are you going to set up a proper accountancy practice? You know, the insults are still the same, just delivered in a different way. And I'm like, I'm happy sitting with my staff. I'm happy sitting in a nice office where I don't have a big, massive sign outside the door because I'm completely online. I don't need the, you know, the gratification from local people. I'm not saying that I wouldn't accept it, and I'm not saying that it wouldn't be welcomed, but I'm saying I don't do this for anyone but me and the people close to me, like my staff members, like my close family. That is the big mindset shift with me. I think I delivered what I done for my business for other people. And I was always wondering myself, am I hypercritical of my own business? Am I the only person that's interested in this? And then as time has progressed, and like when we look back, it's 3.5 years, I'm now 100% confident that people need this service. It's not just you should have this because it's really good and it's really insightful. I do think fundamentally people need a service like this to ensure that they have stability and clarity over their numbers. And it was, you remember the old network that we were all involved in, and that was the thing that people kept saying, it was clarity. Every time my name was mentioned, it was gives clarity, gives clarity. And I didn't really truly understand that until now. I can sit with people and go, right, your accounts are up to the 31st of March. Let's throw this out to the next year and let's measure it. Let's actually put targets in place. Let's set KPIs. So my mindset has changed from the standpoint of I'm not an overglorified HMRC tax calculator anymore. We are an external finance department. I act as an FD to people. I get on calls with international clients that we don't even touch taxes, and we plan the business out. We look at the cash flow, and the business has evolved, and I as a person have evolved off the back of that. And I do truly believe what we provide is exceptional.
What I hear is the three C's. Number one is the confidence in what you deliver and how you deliver, and the certainty that obviously that now brings. And I think then the two other C's that stand out, although that was another C in there, is ultimately you now make people feel in control of them, of their finances in their position, which ultimately then supports, enhances obviously what you're now looking to create. And then I think the second thing as well that ties in is just now being able to give them clarity around, well, okay, this is where they are, this is what they're looking for. Because when you bring emotion into anything that you now do, there's always going to be your worldview, which is going to potentially distort how you think and what you see. And I heard a great thing a little while ago, and that was like emotion kills, data builds. And whilst obviously I believe that you need both, when it now comes back down to obviously the business element, having that clarity, having that control, and obviously having that awareness is so integral if you now want to be able to stabilize, if you want to be able to build, and then also if you want to be able to scale. And it's such an integral part that requires as much attention as every other facet and every other component. So James, if anybody's interested or wants to find out more or wants to go and follow some of your stuff, where's the best place to go, buddy?
Probably Instagram, which I believe is fitpro.financial. So
Strongest accountant in the world. That's basically what it
that's
was.
not the hashtag on it. But yeah, no, if you go to the Instagram, there's loads of good content there. If you're just looking some value, you know, please drop me a follow. It'd be greatly appreciated. But that's the best place to find us. Now, our consult link is currently closed down at the minute. It should be reopening in the midsummer here because, as we discussed before the call, you know, there's so much work involved in the certain things that we do. We just want to get that all ticked off, get it solidified, get the structures in place before we even consider bringing any new clients on.
This is James Gibson. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy Disneyland, my friend, and I appreciate you.
Thank you very much, buddy.
Take care, team.